We are about to go to the Underground Seattle, called the Underground Seattle Tour. That's pretty much underground and that burnt a long time ago, so they built something new over it. Yeah. There was a great fire of 1889, and it's so practically burnt all downtown Seattle, so they had to rebuild it, and we're just about there. So after all that happened, there was law that all the downtown buildings had to be made out of brick or stone or something so that they wouldn't burn down like that happened in the Great Fire.
All right, folks, I'm going to stand in
Okay,
front of
so
the
we're
picture,
underground
so
now.
Reese's face, but go ahead and gather around. All right. So, folks, this is First Avenue in 1878, 11 years before the fire. Before I get into that story, we crossed Yesler Avenue right over here. We're on this sidewalk now. Okay. That's a ghost. Ghost. And that speck up there is a guy being blown off his crapper. Tough times in the frontiers. All right, so here's the first thing you need to know. We're actually not underground. This is the first level of Seattle. So that means when we're up there, we're walking on the second story of Seattle. Now, it's not the entire city that's underground, folks, so get that out of your head, too. Some people go way far and exaggerate that. It's the 33 square blocks that burned down, the business district. So the fire happened on Madison and First, 2 blocks north from where we are now. There was a cabinet shop with a young kid named Jan Beck. He was a Swedish immigrant in his mid-20s, and he was melting glue. In those days, glue was made out of animal fat, and they were in bricks. So you put the brick of glue onto a pot, and you just melt it over a fire. He gets distracted, forgets about that little project, and before you know it, the glue bubbles over and catches the floor on fire. It was a small flame until he threw water on it. Yeah, he panicked. Now the whole thing catches on fire. There is a paint shop above this cabinet shop that catches on fire. All right, that didn't do it to you. There was a liquor shop next door. Oh, this is that kind of crew. All right. 47 cases of whiskey had just been shipped in, all of that exploding in flames. I know. Now, across from this, folks, is a hardware shop. Now, in those days, ammunition, gunpowder, and dynamite is what our hardware shop stocked back then. So take a look again. This is all wooden buildings. The streets are sawdust. We're perfect kindling for this whole fire, right? So 116 acres, 33 square blocks, and 12 hours later, we burn down this part of the city. Nobody dies in the fire. So why is that? Well, first of all, people didn't live down
in the stores, the ground level stores.
That's what those are for.
Is that everybody?
Not quite. Not quite. Oh, he's back there.
All right,
Oh,
folks,
that's
this is
gold.
original quarry stone. We regraded the streets on more than one occasion over the century, but this is the original from the 1890s. That's still First Avenue. This is Yesler Avenue, retaining walls. Okay? The glass, purple from the top. Any purple glass you see around the Pioneer District is original from that time period, but it was never purple. It was clear because all glass is clear. It's just that glass makers back then used manganese as a bleaching agent to prevent glass from turning brown. They just didn't realize that when exposed to ultraviolet rays, it turns purple. So much for that. Did anyone notice the establishment that was located in front of this glass at the corner? Yeah, the chocolate factory, right. So it was actually the second rebuild of the Scandinavian Bank. This is the original entrance to the bank, right here. This bank was big deal in the 1898 because we stored the first 68 miners 2 tons of gold after they arrived on the SS Portland that year, 1897. They were coming back from the Klondike region. And this was a big deal for Seattle because when we figured out that we can just skip on over through Canada into Alaska and find gold, everybody went crazy. It went so bad that Canada had to stop the invasion because the Mounties were the ones finding the dead bodies all around the wilderness. Remember, they're frozen, half-eaten, you name it. Nobody thought about bears and wolves and what it really meant to mine. People heard stories that you'd find flakes of gold off the tree leaves and the bushes. They didn't understand what this meant. So Canada put up a 1-ton law. And it meant that you had to have 1 ton of supplies, food, and everything necessary. That's about a year's worth. If you don't have it when you get to the border, we're going to turn you back around. So we became a supply town. The reason for that is that we're the pit stop to Alaska. In fact, today we still are. If you go on a cruise to Alaska, you're still coming into the Seattle port. So this was good because here's the deal. You can't buy the 1 ton of materials overnight, folks. This is expensive stuff. It meant that if you were really serious about mining, you were moving to Seattle. You were living here for a couple of years and collecting your things little by little and then shipping off. So we're a successful lumber town, right? And now we get to scam everybody because all these people are coming in. We sell all the supplies they need and we can just keep going, right? No honest man was going to make it through this town without falling for a scam. Let me tell you one that I did not make up. It's not even original to Seattle. That had already filtered through the California gold rush. Gold sniffing gophers for sale. People really fell for that. Here's another one that I think is an excellent scam. Dog sled teams. If you had the money to buy your own breed of dogs and get them trained, that's great. But not a lot of people could afford that. And we had training schools around town. So scammers helped you out. They would pick the dogs and train them themselves. But if you weren't savvy to it, there's a reason why the transaction always occurred at the pier, right when you're about to leave. So let's play this out. Here we all are. We have our ticket to Alaska. Our 1 ton of supplies is being loaded up, and everybody's here to say goodbye to you. Okay, you may or may not come back, but this is an adventure. Here comes a scammer with a good set of dogs. They look healthy and sturdy, and he's got a great prize, so you give him the cash, and you load the ship with your furry friends. Right? So there's all this commotion on the ship, you're standing at the edge, the ship starts to roll out, you're waving goodbye, and then a few minutes later you realize your dogs are gone. You see, the scammer didn't train them for mushing snow. They trained them to jump overboard on cue, swim back to the owner, and they would resell the same dogs to somebody else. Yeah. Alaska was doing that scam too. So forget it. You were going to fall for something here. Now, this bank was a 24-hour bank, open 24 hours a day in 1890s. Partly because the Klondike ships were coming in 24 hours a day. This was huge, right? But it also put us on the map money-wise. So before the Klondike Gold Rush, Seattle made maybe about roughly $300,000 in revenue. Within 8 months, a mere 8 months of the Klondike Gold Rush, we shot up to $25 million. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. It's really, really good. So I'm going to tell you the rest of this bank, the rest of the story in the vault. We're going to go into the vault. And it's haunted. So is everyone okay with that? Okay, I'm going to let the kids go first. I'm
okay with that.
Wait till after the people go by. After the people go by, then you know go by, okay? You want to go over here now and look up?
What's all these stuff?
Yeah, look up. See that?
Yes.
Yeah. picture? You want to be in the bank?
Family Dad's in there. Wow, that was a nice building.
So, first of all, the teller stage is the first thing on the left. That's where you came, and the teller will figure to help you out. The doors that you see to the right or behind you are the original vault doors, both the one on either side. This is the vault that stored the first 60 of miners' gold. But it also, other people who came back with gold wanted to come to this bank. This bank made headlines all over the world. And again, very important for Seattle, because remember that little neighbor down there, that stinky neighbor, Tacoma? Yeah, they thought we were going to be growing grass on the streets. So this was excellent opportunity to rub it in that we were here to stay. The only thing is we weren't very humble about it. And we kind of did some stupid things to show off, not only to Tacoma, but the rest of the world, that we had the gold here. So I'm just going to get my flashlight on my phone and point out the skylight that they had built above this vault. Wow. Oh, wah, wah, wah. You see why that might have been a stupid idea, right? Everybody walking over this vault could see the gold, the Scandinavian American gold. Clearly, once that happened, we start getting a lot of robbery attempts. Yeah. So 1898,
And it's clearly not the
a young
smartest idea.
teller named Edward was working that evening, and two younger kids, or teens, wanted to see if they could get into the vault and take some gold. They did have a gun that supposedly they didn't know how to use, and one of the kids gets nervous and shoots. Penetrates Edward, and they get scared, they run off, but he dies. So the people in the next, the guy on the next shift finds his body. Now, the only reason we know it's Edward, so we're going to be celebrating 50 years with this company on Memorial Day this year. And we've had lots of stories from paranormal experts who've come down here, but guys, we've had tour guides who've had things happen here. One tour guide always had stuff happen when she would bring her elementary kids, because we get a lot of private tours with kids. And she writes about it. We have a book that we sell where she writes about it. But her reasoning is, kids are very open to these things, and they don't have, they're not scared, or they're not freaked out about it, and very open to the idea. So that's why she felt that the apparitions happened with her at that time. The paranormal experts, I see how quiet it got. The paranormal experts are the one that keep hearing the name Edward and the visions that they've seen, and this is also what that tour guide teacher saw, was someone in that time period. So the idea is that when you die a gruesome death like that, he doesn't know he's dead, so he keeps roaming this corridor, right? I personally think the next section that we're going to is more haunted than this one, but this is the one that got the attention from Ghost Hunters, that show on Sci-Fi. So, season 3, episode 13, check it out. All right, I'm not going to tell you what happened, but one of our former tour guides was in that show, and they spent, now this is really freaky, they spent 2 nights in the dark in here with the rats. You tell me what I'd be more afraid of. Yeah? So anyway, you'll have to watch that episode, and we now offer a paranormal tour that shows a clip of that episode if you're interested. So, when they built the bank upstairs, it's what's now the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. And they made a corridor, we're all going to be passing by it, but a little hallway that had a staircase that led up to the upstairs, okay? You guys ready to roll now? All right, we're going to go to the more haunted section. All right, keep going, guys. And we're doing shoes.
Episode 15 of season.
We live about an hour and a half away from here. The last time we came here, my daughter was 8. Wait our turn, okay? That's how we're going up the end of the line here, guys.
That's a cool picture. Yeah, we gotta catch up with the group.
Up the tripod.
Really clear. No, Emily, I'm dead serious. That's strange.
Like a rat.
No, it's not. It's too big to be a rat. Whoa. Check out that moss.
Now we get to go downstairs. guys come on ahead of us. This is a good time. Slowies.
Thank you.
Couple more. Oh, you're locked in.
Dad, that velvet seat looks like it could be repaired really nicely. Dad, that red velvet chair looks like it could be repaired really nicely. Really, a bar?
Other side.
Really, a
My
bar?
store. Would anybody like to purchase anything? I don't see any. That's one. Really? Yeah. That's it? Yeah.
Of what it looked like when it was constructed out of wood. 1888 is your giveaway too. So it did burn down on the June 6, 89 fire. They rebuilt it the same amount of brick. Okay? So you actually walked in the second story window.
Wow.
You came downstairs. We're in the first floor. These windows are over there. Where's the door? Just wait a second. I'm gonna tell you. Look, see the windows? Get the windows down. The door, that door is right over here. Okay, and we're gonna be leaving there. Then we're gonna be going out. We will see the archway. Those doors aren't there anymore, and then turning the corner to Occidental. Okay, kind of cool, isn't it? All right, so here's the deal. I have a story for the adults. Kids will get their story next. Don't worry. But it doesn't really work if the adults don't get the witty banter and puns. There's a lot of puns in this story. All right. So what kind of group are we gonna be?
Yep.
Good.
Gonna be a good group. Gonna be a fun group.
Yep.
You're on vacation, people.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
on vacation. All right. So 1886, the mayor decides to go ahead and tax the residents of Seattle. At that time, nearly 30,000 people live here. Not bad. Now, before he can do that, he's got to know what's happening. So he pulls out an occupational survey that everyone has to fill out. Gender, location, and occupation are your main questions. So, 25,000 people approximately participate in this survey, which was great. So they look at it, 90% of those surveys is exactly what we thought. It's a logging town, so there's a lot of men here, and they're all spread around town. Miners, sailors, you got it. What caught his attention were the 10% of surveys that were single women claiming seamstress as a job. Right? He looks at their addresses. Where are all these seamstresses located? Why would a logging town need a seamstress? Oh, they're all sewing within 3 blocks of each other. It's a very concentrated area of town. And he notices that their income is quite high. And it's been happening for quite a while. Little did he know. So he decides to launch an investigation. He already has an idea what it might be, but he's like, okay, I gotta come down to the bottom of this. And he decides he should take one for the team and lead this investigation himself. But you know, you also need your support system, so 6 more buddies went along for the fun. So you have 7 men trolling 3 blocks of town in what ends up being, in the books, the longest, most exhaustive research we've ever put out. It was all undercover, if you know what I mean. 2.5 months later, they surface and tell the public, well, we didn't see any sewing machines.
We didn't
But
see
you
no
know those things
problem.
were hand done back in the day. Anyway, so they decide that the seamstresses are going to get taxed $10 a piece, and that's a lot of money. They weren't against it either, though. Think about it. This was a livelihood for them, and they wanted to keep it going. $10 each per month. The gambling tables that they kind of ran into, $50 a piece.
Wow.
So our new tax was called the entertainment and sewing tax, and it brought in 88% of the operating revenue of our city. Wow! I know, just those things.
The oldest
it's-
profession is seamstress.
Exactly. Today's 98 though.
Yeah.
98% of our income now. I'm kidding. Totally joking. All right. So so a really popular, the person that we really like to point out, she's actually very important to the city of Seattle, and more reason one. So Madame Lou Graham was her name. We're going to see a picture of her at the very end of the museum. Her real name was Dorothea Open, and she was a German immigrant. She moved to Seattle in the 1850s. Okay, let's backtrack, guys. Remember that being a woman in the frontier days was not fun. First of all, women did not have rights or privileges. They couldn't buy land or property. They were not even encouraged to read or write. Your job was to just do one thing, be in the kitchen and take care of the kids. That was it. So if you're going to live in a logging town especially, you're going to have to really have a backbone of steel. Madame Lou was super smart. Remember, she's coming from Europe. The first thing she does is change her name from Dorothea to Lou. Why do you think?
Males.
Male's name, which means what? Yeah, what'd you say? Got backbone, right? Right, but you could buy property back then. You can buy, buildings, you name it. You don't have social media yet, guys. You just have to sign your check with the man's name and you're done. That's one thing she did. Second thing she did was open up the finest sewing house in town. We're talking the gold lace furniture, the drinks, everything. It was very, very uppity up. No pun intended. Anyway, so here's the deal. Only certain people could come in through those doors, and it was considered top hat service. So that meant that the diplomats and the politicians came in. But how do you acquire those people to come visit, right? Well, she says this is going to be a place where you can have the finest of political conversations. Really, that's all you choose. I have a service level on every floor for you for whatever your needs are. But she trained her women. So her seamstresses were very carefully selected. They had a 2-year max to work with her. They had to read and write, speak more than one language, talk politics. She would read them the paper every day. And they even had to play instruments. Think of them as the geishas of the Wild West. Yep, it was a very fine establishment. And she also offered something else.
And what year was this? What year was this? When?
1850s.
Okay.
So she offers what they call a full-service salon. What this means is that, gentlemen, if you had a little inkling towards something you didn't want your compadre to know about at work in the office, Madame Lou would take care of you with the utmost secrecy as long as you paid up, right? So she was very smart. This is going to make sense when you see the picture at the very end. Now, here's the deal. While she was doing all of this, she was buying lots of land and buildings and property, you name it. Now let's go back to the fire. Everything burned down, including the banks. Business owners need loans to rebuild, but the banks are burnt down. So who did they go for loans?
Lou.
Madame Lou. And she offered it at high interest, okay? She also had the cash to rebuild after the fire. You can go to 4th and Jackson and see her what was then her newly remodeled establishment. But today it's the Union Gospel Mission, so just watch out. So anyway, go over there and check it out. All right, she dies in 1903 and she's only 47 years old. And she had already accumulated about $1 million in that time, making her the richest person in Seattle. Unfortunately, no family to claim that money, so since she was a huge advocate of education, the city decided to donate it to the school system, which is today Seattle Public. The funny thing is, the book that talks about her, that Bill Spido wrote, was banned from the Seattle Public Schools. Today, that money is worth more, about 7 or 8 million, something like that, and now is considered the second largest private donation next to another famous Seattleite who cares about education. Who said that?
Yeah,
Bill Gates, yeah. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about her, when we get to the end of the museum, at the last section of the tour, you're going to see a picture of Madame Lou, okay? This was a promotional photograph that went around town. So back in those days, sort of like a speakeasy where you knew the secret knock or the password, for this type of establishment, you would look at a picture. And based on what you saw, you knew exactly what Madame Lou offered. That's just the way it rolled. So in this picture, she's sitting with the 4 women who brought in the most money that year, the 4 top earners. One of those 4 made more money than the other 3 and was so popular that Madame Lou charged double for her, okay? So when we get there, it's going to be your job to go study this picture and see what it is that made her interesting so much that she made that much money. Let's just say she had an interesting stitching pattern, shall we? Okay? So I'm not, if you think you know, don't spill the beans, because that's going to be your little hint there. Okay. same Seattle in 1864. I just want to point out here, guys, that this building.
I accidentally do it sometimes, but I don't
This
know how to do it.
is the original Thomas Crapper. And there are some other really cool things in here. We are on the very first level of Seattle. The part that burned down. But it was all rebuilt. This is the rebuilt part, but whatever.
So.
So hot. These are the rats. Streets are actually kind of good shape.
Folks, 1907 is when we have to officially condemn the underground because of a teeny tiny outbreak of bubonic plague. Yeah, teeny tiny, about 10, 12 casualties. The thing is, we were more concerned that we were less than 2 years away from the first World's Fair. So it was the Yukon-Alaska Exposition. And of course, we were going to be showing off our Klondike money, so we didn't want the papers to read bubonic plague in Seattle or no one's going to come over. So a health inspector's hired, and he takes a look at everything, and he says, you know what? It's really great your business owners rebuilt out of brick their establishments, but they were getting cheap and saving money and still using wood flooring inside the establishment. That's where the rats are living, underneath the wood planks.